Hello. In this video, I will help you translate a few of the Sententiae in the first chapter. As Wheelock notes, these are all adapted from actual Latin authors, but for the first chapter, they've been so simplified that he doesn't even bother to credit the author. Anyway, here we go. Number one, we'll start with the first one. Labor me vocat. Now, the first thing you always want to look for is the verb. Take a second and try to identify the verb here. You can do that just by what the verb looks like. That is labor a verb? Maybe, maybe not. Is me a verb? Well, probably not. Vocat, is that a verb? Go look through the vocab if you need to figure it out. You might also look at the morphology. Well, labor, or, was that one of the endings that we know? Well, figure that out. Me, again, probably not a verb. At. Well, that could be the ending of a verb. So take a second to figure this out. Well, as you may have guessed, you got it right. It's vocat. This is the verb here. Now let's think for a moment. If this form were voco, you would know right away that it's I call. Oops. You might find an ego there in the sentence too. Ego voco. But it's not necessary because you see from the ending that it's I call. But here it's vocat, the third person singular. So it might be he calls, she calls, or it calls, or there might be a name or a noun that is calling. But which is it? Well, now we should look to see if there's a noun that could fit the bill here. What do you think it is? Me or labor? Well, obviously it can't be me. The reason it can't be me is because then you'd be saying me calls, and that's caveman talk. So if it's going to be anything, it has to be labor, this one right here, which means, if you've seen Wheelock's gloss, work. And now we want to know, what does work call? Work calls me. Basta. So I will leave number 2 for you to figure out, and let's go to number 3. We can discuss it in our online conference online, by the way, the ones we skip here. Again, let's find the verb. And this time it's a little harder, or at least it would be if Wheelock hadn't glossed both of the words for us. Festinare is, of course, the verb. But what form is it? Or more specifically, is this a statement of fact, like work calls me, or is it a command? Well, if you've guessed that it's a command, you're right. This is an imperative, a command. And Festina, as we know from Wheelock's gloss, means to hurry. But what about lentē? Well, that's an adverb. So an adverb always, as you see, is added to a verb. So here you can just tack it onto the verb. And it means here, hurry up or make haste slowly, whatever that means. Wheelock says it was a favorite saying of Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, well, after Caesar. Now, for sentence 4. Here we have 2 separate sentences separated by a semicolon. So let's just look at Laudās me first. I don't think you'll have any trouble identifying Laudās as the verb, but who is praising? That is, what's the ending here? Think about that for a second. Pause the video if you have to, and go look at the endings if you don't remember. Okay, you praise. Whom do you praise? Me. So now culpant. This is a different ending, so it can't be you, but luckily the verb is glossed, so we know that we don't need to think too hard about what culpare means. It means to blame, but who is blaming? Again, it's not you, that would be S, it's ANT. Again, if you need to pause the video and to go look at the endings, go ahead. So if you figured it out, it's they blame. Whom do they blame? Well, again, me. So you praise me, they blame me. Now let's go to number 6. Quid dēbēmus cogitare. Now we're in trouble. The first thing we want to do is look for the verb, right? But we have 2 of them. Here they are. That's a verb, and that's a verb. So what are we going to do about that? Well, here's another rule for you to remember. You always want to go with the conjugated verb first. Cogitare is in the infinitive, the present infinitive. Dēbēmus is conjugated. So that's where we're going to want to start. So if you need to pause the video, go ahead and do that to figure out, first off, what dēbēre would mean, that's in our vocab, and also what mus is. That is, who is doing this. So if you figured it out, it's we ought. And you'll notice there's no personal pronoun here, we. We just know that from the ending, mus. Now, we ought, and again, since this is an infinitive, you can just tack it on. We ought to think. And here's a question mark, so we might as well put that there right now. And that gives us a hint what to do with quid. Quid here is the direct object. Like me in the previous sentences, it means what. What, and now our word order in our translation is a little out of order, but what ought we to think? There's our translation. So, the 9th sentence. This is a sad sentence, but we have to approach it in the same way. Where's the verb? Take a second to identify it. That's right, amat. Again, pause if you need to figure out what the subject is, and remind yourself what amare, the verb amare, means. That is, amo amare. It's an amat. So, if you pause and figure it out, you'll see it's a third person singular. He, she, or it. So we see that it's that someone loves. Who loves, though? We don't actually know, because there's no subject here. All we know is that it's a third person singular. It is he, she, or it. So let's go with, let's say it's a he. Or he loves, well, we've seen this before, and we should know what that is. She loves me not. So pretty straightforward, if sad. Now, sentence number 13. First off, where's the verb? Okay, if you thought about it, here it is, cogitas. And what the ending is as. So what's that? It's you think. What do you think? That's the next question. Just remind yourself what these two words mean. And I think it should be pretty easy. You, and let's go with the adverb first, because that you can just tack that onto the verb. You often think nothing. Nice insulting sentence. Now we come to the English to Latin translation. This is really good practice, so don't skip this. Just as you want to find the verb when translating from Latin, you need to think about which verb you want before you do anything else. So the verb here is, well, we have two in English here, are giving. Here's something you need to remember. In English, we often use what we call the progressive present. That is, they are giving. I am running. She is doing. He is watching. Latin doesn't do that. You're going to want to just kind of forget about that and just say they give. So they give nothing. So pause the video for a second and think about what verb in our vocabulary means give. Well, it's do dare. Do, dare, dedi, datum. Now we have to think about how to make that mean they. Again, we don't need a pronoun here. We don't need the Latin word they, which is illi, but we don't even know that yet. We don't need it. We need to figure out how to conjugate this verb in the present, in the third person plural. And the way to do that, you might pause the video and think about this for a second. If you're back, this is the way to do it. Dant. Do dare. Oops, I made this an I. Ha, that's the passive infinitive. We need the active infinitive. My bad. Excuse me. Let's get rid of that. It won't erase. There it goes. Dare. Excuse me. Do dare. So you get rid of the re, the infinitive ending. Oops, I got rid of too much there. Now you have a. The ending for the third person plural is nt. There we go. Dant. So we have the verb dant. So they give nothing. Well, nothing. If you remember, just look at the vocabulary. Nihil. Okay, one more English to Latin. And this one has two parts. If I err, he often warns me. So let's start with this one right here. I err. Well, take a second to go look up the verb if you need to. You'll see that this verb is ero, errare. So, ero is how you do that in the first person. Ero. And then we can just add si, if, which is si ero. Now we need to come to our second verb. He often warns me. Well, I think we should know what verb this is, but take a second to have a look at the vocabulary list if you need to remember. Of course, it's moneo, monere. Take a second to figure out how to conjugate that into the third person singular, namely he. How to make that say he or she or it. Well, it's monet. Now, again, let's not forget, word order here doesn't matter. So we have monet. What word do we want next? We already have he right here in the ending, t, so we don't really need it. We can go with often next. Monet, saepe, me. Pretty easy. You can even add that macron if we want. So that's it. Let's meet in the conference room to discuss any questions you might have about these sentences we translated here. And of course, we'll talk about the sentences we didn't work on here. Lots of luck translating.